morning, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us this morning for today's session, which is Skipton Talks, a BDM's perspective on lending criteria. My name is Rachel Honeysett, and I will be shortly joined by the wonderful James Duffy. Now, James joined us relatively recently as a BDM. And having been a BDM myself, I know that once you've been in the job a few years, it's difficult to remember what the really exciting niche criteria is and what is the kind of business as usual stuff. You just get used to talking about it a lot. So with James being so fresh to Skipton, I was really keen for him to join us to share with you all what he thinks are the most, exciting parts of our criteria, the stuff that I guess he wished he'd known before he joined us, if you will. James actually started out his career in the electrical trade, so he's a man of many talents if he's out visiting you in your office. However, since 2016, James has worked for 2 other lenders before joining us at Skipton earlier this year. So he has an extensive lender experience, and while he also uses his experience of working closely with brokers, in his own words, he's able to adapt and use a balanced approach when supporting brokers with those complex inquiries, and that's something I've experienced firsthand listening to James speaking about cases as well. So James, thank you so much in your first few months at Skipton for being thrown in at the deep end and volunteering to speak in front of 300 people this morning. Over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Rachel. So, yeah, my name's James Duffy, and I represent Skipton Building Society, covering the North East. I started just mid-March, and I think I'm finally finding my feet, and I've been just really impressed with the things that I didn't realise we could do. I'd always had good reports of Skipton prior to joining. That's one of the reasons I was really keen on the role. But as I began to sink my teeth into policy and realise how flexible we are, I just think it's really relevant in today's lending. So I'm really keen to just share a few of the real strong points that we have. And I'd encourage anyone, if they do have any further questions, to make sure you reach out to us. But first of all, what I want to touch on is professionals. In my meetings, it's the biggest stress I imagine advisors have is when you're just trying to get a lender to take a view on a case when it doesn't quite fit into a box either way. And along what comes with that is your professional applicants. So I thought what I'd do really briefly here is just explain, the policy as it stands, and sort of give you an example of how we can go outside the box and what we need in order to do that. So, first contracts, employment, we like to say 6 months employment history. There will be certain roles where someone may not be able to evidence that, and it's often someone who's had to qualify into a profession and then they began the first role. Anyone like that, something where I'd always encourage a phone call in, and we can make sure it's positioned correctly, and we'll be able to take a view on that. A really strong point that I've had 3 examples of this since I started. So clearly advisors are slightly aware of this, is employed partnership. It can often, when someone changes their employment situation or in the way that they're paid, it can, especially given the timing of when they want to carry out a mortgage transaction, can cause issues as well. So that's something I'll be giving you an example of shortly. Locum work. We're really flexible on locum work. We've recently changed it where if we can sort of say 3 months proof of income given, and then put that side by side with a track record over the past couple of years, it means that we can really build a profile for the client and try and assess that income and look at where we can land from an affordability point of view. Bandings in particular, I think I've seen a few NHS pay slips in particular, and they can often be quite wordy, and sometimes a lot of my phone calls are just sort of trying to get my head around on what we're going to take. Especially with your doctors, your nurses and things like that, you are going to see lots of different banding and supplementary income. So we can look at that and try and ensure it's consistent and take all that into account. Future pay rises is something I was really, that it always seems to depend on timing. If you've got a client where they're due to get a pay rise from the current employer within the next 3 months, and we can get written confirmation of that, then it means that we can use that to support the affordability. Again, it seems to just be a case of timing. When the case comes in, they may not have been in receipt of the pay rise. If we can see that verification of it, that's on its way, it's within that time period, and we can hang our hat on it, that really goes a long way. And then additional income. So, it's not incoming now. People are working longer hours. You've got your bonuses, your commissions, your overtimes. And for a lot of clients, they've been doing this role a long time. And if we can, again, it's rather than just trying to limit how much we can take, often it's 50%. Sometimes it may just need a bit more to get across the line. So again, with your professional applicants, where we can see that forms a constant part of their role, there's a track record there, we can actually take 100% of those additional incomes to really boost the affordability. I've got an example just on the next slide. Brilliant, thank you. So this one really stuck in my mind because this was the first one that I had to deal with as BDM for Skipton, and I had a really good chat with the underwriters, and there just seems to be a genuine appetite to look at these kind of clients. Had a solicitor who'd been made a partner after being an associate at a firm for 10 years, so really consistent track record of employment. Now, what was really good for the applicant was that she'd just been made a partner, which is, fantastic news, but it wasn't, I don't think the advisor was as thrilled about it, given when she wanted to make an application for the mortgage. So the challenge was that the client didn't have any history of being self-employed, which of course is what we need to assess it now that she became a partner. What we did is we requested evidence of the income for the last 2 years. It was very consistent. And we just saw confirmation of what the minimum projected earnings were going to be moving forward as a partner. So it went from 120 to 160, and we used the average for affordability. And I was just really impressed with how quick it was, and the fact that there's just a genuine appetite to lend to these kind of clients where the income can't just be verified as easily, basically. Thanks, Rachel. One thing that I've been getting more and more queries for is your independent contractors. I think that, because of changes in how people are employed, and, I think there's just becoming a bigger driver. Me personally, in the Northeast, I do see quite a lot of it, especially on the Teesside area, and I'm sure it applies to other areas of the country as well. We've got really, really strong proposition. And we've actually just made a recent improvement, actually, which is what I was going to come on to later, but we seem to be making regular improvements for the better, and seem to be coming through really quickly. So for ourselves, again, minimum 6 months of contract history with a 2 years overall experience in the same sector. We ask for a CV, so it's I like to think a lot of people get a CV, so it should be easy to provide. The minimum income that we require on an independent contractor is 50,000, but our calculation is incredibly strong. It's a daily rate times 5 based on a 48-week year, and that's irrespective of whether the client's operating as a sole trader or through a limited company. If we can verify that they've got a daily rate, and with that track record, that's what we can use. And you find that it works really, really well on affordability for that reason. And just to get that across the line and to assess it, we just like to see 1 month's personal or business bank statements showing the income and expenditure, just to tie the two. But yeah, it's something that's went down really, really well. And I think it's the calculation itself that's really strong as well, because I think that's what gives it most of its strength. So yeah, I think maintenance and benefits has been something that's definitely raising its head a lot more. And I think what I always like to stress is that, people work really, really hard, and they work a lot of hours, and the challenge is that they're still not earning enough. And the fact that we're a lender that can accept maintenance and benefits, I just think I use the cliche of real life lending, but I just think I genuinely believe that. I think that you've got a lot of people who work very hard also in addition to in receipt of maintenance or benefits. So the fact that they've got that, and they're able to use it for affordability with ourselves, I genuinely think it's the right thing to do. Spouse and child maintenance, we can look at one or two ways. I think we can take a court order if there is one, although I'm seeing less and less of that now. I think that more often than not, there is just an agreement between the parties. So if that's the case, we can't just take 3 months bank statements to verify receipt. And universal credit, the fact that we take that minus the housing benefit element, we obviously just need to confirm the 3 months worth of universal credit statements or the bank statements. But what's key for me really is, I think, it's the working tax credits, the child tax credits, the personal independence payment, and the disability living allowance. I see a lot of clients who, if they're actively in work, they're also in receipt of these more often than not. And I just think that when that gets added to the affordability, it is something that it's often needed to get across the line. And I don't know how many advisors would say that sometimes they can struggle to find a lender that will accept those. And if they do, then maybe only be aware of one or two. So I always like to shout about the fact that we can definitely accept it. So new build, one of the things that I was most looking forward to talking about when I joined Skipton was new build. You're seeing a lot of sites going up. I think there's a lot of things on the horizon. I know there's been other webinars that I've discussed it. You've got the green agenda, you've got the EPC ratings, and it's becoming more and more in people's mind. And I think that the fact that we're heavily invested in the new build space was something I was looking forward to sink my teeth into. The big one for me is 95% loan to value on new build houses, 90% on new build flats, which isn't entirely common. There seems to be high demand for new builds, and it seems to be increasing. First of all, there's not enough stock to begin with, and I think we could all argue we'd like to see more. But what is apparent is, there is a little bit of a premium on new build. So trying to maximise affordability, offering 95% loan to value on new build is definitely the right thing to do. In the buy-to-let space, and I think this is really powerful as well, there's a lot of changes coming up on the horizon, 2025, 2028 respectively, on the buy-to-let space for EPC. So the fact that we're able to offer 75% loan to value on new build flats, I think is really key. I'm already having conversations about that now, and I think that getting ahead of that and making sure that we can lend on these properties, I think it's going to the change is going to come where people will be assessing the portfolios. They won't want to remove themselves from the buy-to-let space, but they may be looking at other more sustainable options. So 75% loan to value on new build flats is really key for that. Shared ownership. I think I haven't had too many queries on shared ownership myself, but I do have a few advisors who they tend to specialise in it. So I think that's probably the pattern that I see. But 95% loan to value of the share to be purchased, that's including flats as well. So just to separate it slightly from standard flats and new build, we can do 95% loan to value of the share to be purchased. And then key as well, and incentives. I'm not really seeing many incentives, if I'm honest. I think that the properties seem to be selling quite well. But I think it almost seems a seasonal thing to me, where all of a sudden incentives will be available. Rachel's probably the best person that would discuss that. But I just really, the fact that we can't take them, what I would say to stress is we accept incentives up to 90% LTV, up to a maximum of 5% of the value. Again, don't see too many, but I think on the new build in particular, what's really key for me is the strength of the offer period that we offer. For ourselves, we offer a 9-month offer with a view to extending for a further 3 months if it's necessary. I think the view is that's probably going to be necessary at the minute. But what I think is really key for us is whenever we grant an offer extension, we extend the rate that was originally taken out. And in a climate where rates seem to be going up, especially over the period of a new build, I think if it is going to take a year, given the pattern that rates have taken, having that reassurance that if we do need to extend that offer, that'll be on the original rate is really powerful. And as I said before, it's not all about rate at the moment. I've had phone calls and the first question being asked is, how long are your offers valid for? Which is a bit of an upside down moment from what it was a few months ago. So yeah, really, really positive. From a servicing point of view, despite the new builds taking as long as they are to build, the builders are still wanting to get the mortgage side of it done as fast as possible, which I find a bit ironic. But what I will stress is that we do try and get those prioritised. We are trying to assess them within that 48 hours, and then of course documents after the fact. We try and assess documents within 24-hour period as well. So despite the builds themselves taking a little bit longer, we definitely try and get our part done as fast as possible as well. Joint borrower sole proprietor is something that I hadn't been able to discuss in depth in my previous roles, but when I've really looked at what we can offer for it, especially given the current climate, we've got the cost of living going up, we've got property values going up. Counting myself in this, I think younger borrowers in particular, they're not really wanting to go for the 1-bed flats, maybe the 2-bed terraces. They are trying to find that property that they are going to feel they're going to stay in for a long time, and affordability is an issue. Every lender is looking at affordability. I don't think we can discount ourselves from that. Sorry. So having broad policy that can try and aid that, I just think I think it's a given. Really, I think that's what we've got a bit of a responsibility to do that. So our JBSP, just really briefly, we can't take income from up to 4 parties. There's no, it's not based on, there's no minimum income, sorry, because it is strictly based on affordability. So we can go up to 95% on that. What many people may not know though is with ourselves as supporting borrowers, don't need to be related. So I think that will show you quite a few dynamic examples of when people's circumstances can't be put into that nuclear family supported borrowing. So yeah, really, really positive. And then again, there is flexibility on the term, depending on the scenario, which I think is really powerful. But more importantly, we lend on standard rates, so there's no premium on that, if that makes sense. So I've got an example here. I wrote Mam when I typed it, but it's been changed to Mum, which is fine. I'm based in Newcastle, so that's no problem with that. Mum and Dad, both aged 68. Given their age, there's very little flexibility to switch to repayment. So Skipton were able to provide a JBSP mortgage where adult children are happy to support. The adult children were able to demonstrate affordability for their own mortgage along with the remaining balance. And what was key for us, because we didn't need to use their income at all, we were able to ignore the age. So the remaining balance was put over a 20-year term. Parents could afford to pay this, was having disposable income for retirement, and that the adult children's income was used to really support that. The reason I wanted to use that example is simply because I think the common feature of JBSP will often be for parents helping children, and that's definitely a given for us. I think it's often simpler to look at than the old guarantor mortgage structure. This way, all income supports the application and all income taken into account. So one thing that I was aware of, but it's just been, clarified since I've joined, is just how much Skipton has tried to make things easier for advisors and to the end result, the clients. The support that's available is more importantly, we're not trying to channel the support away from your preferred option, which can't be said all the time. So we've got the support staff are excellent. The call waiting times are always really quite low, which means that you're not going to be waiting too long to get through. The processing times, every advisor, you do have access to underwriters. Underwriters are forthcoming. They want to get the case underwritten. They want to make sure that they can, if you need to have that conversation, you can. Turnaround times are really strong. And just internally for me, I think what isn't spoken about enough is the support internally as well. So I've only been here since March, and what I will say is that if there's been something that needs to be discussed a bit more in depth, a more complex case, there's been someone there where we can actually have a chat through with the case properly and get to the meat and the bones, and make sure that we know what it looks like as it comes in. So that helps remove doubt from the advisor's mind. There's nothing worse than maybe by the time you submit that case, we want to know that providing it comes in as it's been described, we're going to lend on that. And then just service as well. I got that text. I did have to ask permission to post that text. But it was just really good timing. I got that a few days just last week. An advisor submitted the case at the weekend, and he got it submitted on Monday, and it went to offer within just over a day. So we are sort of striving to make things easier from a technology point of view, which is helping get our turnaround times down. We've got automated income verification, and we've got automated valuations. And also what I would stress, if the package isn't strong on the case, that's what aids the case go through as fast as possible. So what I would just say is, if you're going to submit a business to us, only send in what we ask for, because we will have an obligation to assess everything that comes in. But also, if the packaging is good from day one, then we can, if we can automatically verify the income, we can do an automated valuation. That's where those offers are really coming out really quickly. And I think what we'd like to get in the end game is all those cases that almost underwrite themselves just fly through, and that frees up underwriting resource for those more complex cases. And I've just seen a real desire to do that since I started.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, James. It's brilliant, isn't it? It's fantastic to hear some of the key things that you've seen since even just starting. So yeah, thank you so much for joining us.